let's get into this. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you the top 25 as they were presented by the committee on Tuesday night. And then I've got 5 main takeaways from this first iteration of the committee's rankings. And granted, we know that this can change and likely will change at some point, obviously with wins and losses and sometimes just how the committee feels. Let's face it, like we've seen them move quite a bit in previous years, just week to week. So is this going to be, tried and true for the rest of the time? No. But we're starting to see a little bit of a philosophy. And again, every time they give us a ranking, they give us a bit of their fingerprint, their DNA, how they're valuing teams, how they're valuing, the wins, the losses, the strength of schedule, so on and so forth, the eye test. All of that matters. And they tend to leave little nuggets for us along the way during the course of these rankings. So here we go. The top 25 playoff rankings, the first playoff rankings, here's what they gave to us. Tennessee was in there at 25, and then you've got the litany all the way up to number 1, Ohio State, just over Indiana and Texas A&M. Now, rather than rattle all of them off there, well, I guess for the audio folks, Tennessee's, that's just going to take too long. So I'm not going to rattle them all off, but I am going to give you these 5 main takeaways. And what I'm going to do here is go back to the top 25 each point and then draw your attention to one area of these rankings and then let's discuss why those are such a big deal. Now, the top 10 is Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas Tech, BYU, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, Indiana, and Ohio State 10-1. Just on the outside of that is where we're going to start, because I thought that the biggest takeaway from these rankings is Texas at 11. Now, that tells us a lot about how the committee is valuing not only Texas, but obviously the SEC, and, rightly so. But them at 11, I think, is going to draw some people's ire, and it's also going to solidify what others think about what Texas is and what they could be during the course of the back end of the season. Here's what I would say. I get it. When I see where they're sitting, I absolutely get it. Number 1, their loss was the opening week of the season, one of their losses, to Ohio State on the road, which is right now the number 1 team in the country as the committee views it. And there's been a lot of discussion in college football about, and not even like publicly, I'm talking about behind closed doors, amongst the commissioners, amongst the committee, and how they should view teams, and more particularly, how they should view non-conference games. And here's something that you have to understand, is that behind closed doors, the strong push is to make sure that we're valuing teams that schedule difficult non-conference games. Well, Texas scheduling the Ohio State game, the committee is not going to want to knock them for that. They're not going to want to put them down for losing that game on the road the opening week of the season with a brand new quarterback. Now, some people agree with that, some don't, okay? Now, that's fine. I agree with that. We need to get to a place in college football where we encourage games like that in the non-conference. Because if we're just going to penalize a team like Texas, for playing that game and losing that game, then we're going to lose that game on the schedule. And we don't want that in college football. So I think that we've got to start there, is that we've got to understand that behind closed doors, the power brokers in college football want to value that game being played first and foremost. So losing that game is not going to hurt Texas all that much. That's one of the reasons they're sitting there at 11 right now. I halfway expected them to be over Notre Dame, although Notre Dame scheduled those difficult games also early in the season. Their 2 losses, Texas A&M and Miami. So I get it where Texas is ranked, and candidly, I don't disagree with it. And here's the other thing that you start to realize when you look at those rankings, you see who's above Texas, who is behind Texas, namely OU right behind them at 12, and Utah right behind OU at 13. Then you've got that litany of ACC teams, Virginia, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Miami from 14 to 18 with Vandy mixed in. And you start to realize, like, hey, those teams aren't going to pass Texas. And guess what? Texas has so much ammunition left on their schedule that them being at 11 right now, they're still in a good position whether they win out or not. Now, they can't go 8-4, obviously. But they still have 2 monster games in the SEC right now left on their schedule in their last 3. They've got to go to Georgia November 15th. Then they're going to have Arkansas at home and Texas A&M at home. So bang, 2 top 5 opponents as the committee sees them, with Georgia sitting there at 5. So this ranking, the first thing that jumped out at me right when I saw this ranking is, hey, Texas at 9-3 is absolutely alive, if not almost certainly in. Now, someone would have to fall out of that, but there are some teams that you could see maybe losing a game or 2 down the stretch that are above them and opening up a spot for Texas in the playoff. Main takeaway, number 1 takeaway, Texas as a 9-3, as the committee is telling us, is absolutely alive for the playoff. Now, I've argued that 9-3 is not going to get in, but again, if you, and I should have realized this before, and candidly, it's my bad, and I'm frustrated about it. But I forgot about that narrative behind closed doors about valuing non-conference opponents and scheduling that game. There is a model being floated, by the way, in college football. I don't know if it's ever going to take hold, that the committee would use to basically provide points based on matchups and wins and strength of schedule. And then you would just make the playoff based on almost a PowerPoint structure and accumulating points. So for instance, Texas going to Ohio State and losing at Ohio State would get them 5 points. Whereas if Texas stayed home and played, Louisiana Monroe, even if they won that game, they would get 0 points. So it would be more valuable for any team in the country to go on the road in the non-conference, play a very good opponent, than it would to host somebody, pay them $1 million, $1.5 million just to get a win in the win column. That's being floated. I don't know if it's ever going to take place, but view this rankings through that lens, because I don't think that they're going to knock Texas. And my biggest takeaway, again, is the committee is telling us that a 9-3 Texas team is not only in the mix, but maybe likely in. Okay, let's go back to the rankings now. My number 2 takeaway. I'm sitting there and I'm seeing these 2 teams in the top 10, and then bang, a third one pops inside the top 15. And all of these teams are from the Big 12. The committee is really valuing the top of the Big 12 right now. You've got BYU at 7, Texas Tech at 8, and Utah at 3. In fact, when you look at the biggest, the teams that made the biggest jump from the AP to the committee rankings, Utah is right in there. Iowa is a +6. Utah is a +4 from what the AP poll was telling us. So this value of the Big 12 right now is strong. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at those 2 teams in the top 10, and I'm thinking to myself, hold on a sec. BYU and Texas Tech both being in the top 10, there is a world where both of those teams get in. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.